We can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
He's a corrupt politician. So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby.
The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely. Republican votes.
Now, there were plenty of back and forth jabs, as you heard, as President Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden shared the debate stage for the final time. Now, last night's showdown was, as you could probably tell, less contentious than the first, covered more ground as well. So for more on the key takeaways, let's bring in our Washington bureau chief, Jackson Prosco, for a breakdown. Jackson, it was like the blood pressure just went down watching that. At least, you have to admit, at least it was a debate, much more civil. What else stood out for you?
Yeah, good morning to you, Anthony. I think a lot of us have forgotten what a typical debate is supposed to look like. And last night, what we saw was much more in line with a traditional debate. I think a few things helped that. One was the format, the fact that they muted each opposing candidate's microphone at the start of each segment, so they had 2 minutes interrupted. And really what that did was kind of lay the groundwork for a whole evening in which the candidates actually didn't really interrupt each other all that much, if at all. They really sort of were given the time to make their point. And moderator Kristen Welker did a great job of sort of playing traffic cop there to make sure that the audience at home could listen to both candidates. The president definitely had dialed down his tone and temperature from the first debate. He essentially sounded more like a traditional politician, if you will. But make no mistake, it was still vintage Trump in many ways. He still busted out plenty of falsehoods. In fact, a huge number of falsehoods over the course of the evening. He lobbied many unsubstantiated allegations against Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, in turn, sort of tried to play it a little more straight and didn't really spend much time focusing on his opponent, did what he did during the first debate, which was to turn to the camera, look straight into the camera, and try and talk to the audience at home and really sort of convey his idea or his claim that he will be a president for all Americans and not just those who vote for him.
Yeah, the fact checkers had a very busy night and continue on today as you listen to all these things. And the one positive, at least you got to hear the different positions on the different issues. There were a range of them. Of course, the pandemic dominated much of the debate. And over the course of the campaign, that has proven to be a vulnerability for the president. How did each side address this in their message? And was Joe Biden effective? And how did President Trump respond?
The president has gone to great lengths to avoid talking about the pandemic over the course of the election campaign, which of course became exceedingly difficult after he himself contracted the virus along with 40 other people at the White House. Last night what we saw was sort of a familiar message track from the president, which is to downplay the severity of this, saying that the U.S. is turning the corner, saying that, for example, he saved millions of lives based on initial projections, which of course implied that the U.S. was going to do absolutely nothing, which was probably never a realistic projection in the first case, and really generally ignoring the fact that 220,000 Americans have died so far in the course of this pandemic. Joe Biden, on the other hand, has really sort of talked about what he sees as a failure of American leadership and has tried to dial down into specific plans, which include economic help to help businesses that are struggling, working on the rollout of things like rapid testing to help businesses reopen at the same time and schools reopen at the same time, and generally saying that there's this leadership vacuum when it comes to management of the pandemic. And really, Anthony, regardless of which candidate people may be supporting, what's hanging over all this is that the U.S. is heading into this awful fall surge of the virus. Yesterday either set a record or came very close to setting a record for daily all-time infections in this country, more than 70,000 new cases and more than 1,000 deaths just yesterday.
It is staggering. And as you look at the debate, you wonder how effective it was. I mean, there's not a lot of real estate, is there, left? 11 days, and so many people had already voted. And you add to that, there's only really a handful of states that will ultimately decide the outcome. Talk about the disadvantage for one of the candidates in that situation.
Yeah, you have to wonder if President Trump had a bit of buyer's remorse for skipping that second debate, because in the time frame between the second debate and last night, another 20 million Americans cast their ballots either by mail or early in-person voting. 50 million Americans have already voted. The number of undecided voters is very, very small. And so really what last night probably did more was to shore up the base for both men. In other words, if you're a Trump supporter, you probably saw his performance, probably liked his performance. No reason to jump ship at this point. If you're a Biden supporter, very much the same thing. Neither man had a knockout punch. Neither man had sort of a catastrophic moment. The little moments that may resonate with the undecided voters probably revolve around issues of empathy and leadership. And one specific moment that's getting a lot of attention was when the issue of child separation was brought up. And Joe Biden referenced a recent report that suggests more than 500 children who were brought to this country with their parents illegally are now orphans. They're in the care of the U.S. government. They've been unable to track down their parents who've been deported back to their home countries. And Trump's response to that was essentially to say, well, at least we're looking after them really well. They're in great facilities. That's the kind of moment that might land with an undecided voter and sway them one way or the other.
Yeah, it was a powerful moment, especially when the president calling the children or the people who brought them in effectively criminals. And the key now is getting out the vote. That will be the biggest challenge as we look to the election. Of course, we'll be following it every step of the way. Jackson, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you.